Hello magical hands and welcome to the pattern drafting of this beautiful blazer right here on the screen. In this portion of the video, we are going to be drafting the patterns, and this video is very detailed and beginner friendly. So without any further ado, let's get into the tutorial of today proper. So we're going to be starting with the back piece, and I ruled out a straight line that will just indicate that will be the top part of this pattern paper. So right from that top part there, I'm going to place my tape and I will mark from my shoulder to my bust point measurement. If you don't know how to take yours, make sure to use the pictures on the screen to take your measurements and apply it right there. The next line is going to be from the shoulder to the under bust line. I will make a straight line across that point. Next will be from the shoulder to the waistline or the half length. And we're also going to make a straight line across that point. Next, we'll mark from the shoulder to the full length of the top. You are going to determine how long you want your top to be, and you're going to make a straight line across that point. I'll start indicating what each line stands for. I have BP for bust points, I have UB for under bust line, and then I have W for the waistline, and the last line is going to be my full length, which I wrote FL. Now we'll move to the starting line and we're going to mark the neck width. For the neck width, I am using 3 inches, and then for the neck depth, I am going to mark 1.5 inch. I'll use the curved side of my ruler to connect those 2 points together. Still on that starting line, I'll mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which gives me 8 inches. Right at that 8 inches there, I'll mark downwards 1 inch for the shoulder slope, and that is because our shoulder is built in a slanted form and not in a straight form. This will help your blouse relax properly on the shoulder area. From that shoulder width, we'll mark downwards our round armhole measurement divided by 2, and we are going to make sure that measurement is sitting at the width of our shoulder measurement. Just make sure that the line is very straight when you connect it downwards. And then we'll rule out the armhole line forward just as seen. In order to get my armhole curve, I'm going to mark the midpoint of that armhole line there. Right at that midpoint there, I'm going to create a curve to meet that armhole line that we extended earlier. I'll just blend the line upwards so it is more visible. Now we are going to start taking the darts, and the determinant for your darts is your nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. That is your apex measurement. So mine gives me 4. I'll mark it on the bust point line, and I'll also mark it on the full length. I'll go ahead and I'll connect those 2 points together with a straight line. Right at the shoulder line, I'll mark the midpoint there. Right at that midpoint line, I'm going to connect another straight line to meet the apex measurement that we have at the bust points there. So my focus for taking my dart for the back piece is the waistline. So on both sides of the apex measurement, I will mark 1/2 inch, and that is what I'm going to use for my dart. So I will connect this 1/2 inch in a slanted form to meet that bust point there. And then I'll also connect it from the other side to meet the bust points there. Just make sure it's in a slanted form. Now I'll just extend the line straight downwards to meet the full length. Normally I would just bring it in a slanted form, but for the sake of this tutorial, I will bring it straight downwards. And there we have the dart. Now we can start taking the round bodice measurement. On that armhole line there, I'll place my round bust measurement divided by 4, and I'm going to mark it right there. On the bust point line, I'm still going to bring my round bust measurement divided by 4, and I'll mark it there. I'll move to the waistline. I'm just going to skip to the waistline. I'll take my round waist measurement divided by 4, and I will mark it there. I'm going to take that dart allowance there and I'll add it, which is 1 inch, and that's because we are cutting out the dart. On the full length, I will mark my hip measurement, and I'm going to replace that dart measurement there. Now I want the hip to be exaggerated, so I added extra 1.5 inch at that point so that the hip is going to be exaggerated. That's the full length is going to have like extra space. It's going to be standing on its own. So I'm going to connect it together as seen, and I'm going to connect all the side seams, these side measurements together just as seen. Now I'll start adding my sewing allowance, that's my side seam allowance, and I'm using 1 inch. If you want to use 2 inches, 3 inches, go ahead and add it, but make sure to sew it all up while you're sewing this. So I just added 1 inch for my side seam allowance, and I'll connect it as seen. Now I'll start cutting out some parts of the papers, of the pattern paper that I'll not be needing, so I don't confuse us with too many lines. Now along the center back, that's along the neckline area, I'm going to reduce some measurements from there. This is going to help me reduce excess fabric at the back piece. The back piece is not going to have a zip allowance, but we are still going to do it because I still want the back piece to have like a sewing line. So I marked 1 inch at the top and I marked 1 inch at the lower part, and I'm going to be cutting that part out. If you notice, it did not get to the side at all. It has no effect on the side is still the same. So now at the full length, I'm going to mark up 1.5 inch, and that is to give my blouse a nice shape. I don't want it to be just straight like that. I need it to have like a very nice curve. So I'll just connect it to meet the dart area, and then make sure to mark it straight into the allowance, just as seen. So now we can go ahead and cut out that lower part that will no longer be needed, just a little bit of shaping that we did there. And now we can work on the dart. So this dart I took at the center back is going to help us reduce any excess fabric that will fold up there. So we'll close up this part just as seen. After closing that part, we are now going to start cutting out the main dart itself, and we are just going to extend it up to the shoulder part because we need this to align with the front piece. This is how the front dart is also going to be taken, and then we'll cut out. Make sure to blend it at that area where it's no longer even, and this is what the back piece looks like. I'll label this part as CB, which is for center back, and the other part as CSB, which is for side back. We'll move over to drafting the front piece. In order to draft the front piece, you are going to need a bigger pattern paper. Now from the top part there, I marked downwards 6 inches, and from this side here facing inwards, I'm going to mark in 6 inches as well. So I have 6 inches at the top part and 6 inches at one of the sides, and I will connect them together just as seen. So these lines that I'm connecting is now going to be my starting point. And the 6 inches that I left at the top part and also at this other side is going to be used to get the collar of the blouse and as well as to form the lapel properly. So we'll start taking our basic bodice measurements. From that point there, I will mark downwards my bust point and I'll rule out a straight line there. Next, I'm going to take my shoulder to my under bust measurement and I'll mark it right at that point there. I'll also rule out a straight line there. These are basically the same measurements we took while we're taking the back piece, but there'll just be a few changes which you would be watching out for. Next, I'll mark from my shoulder to my waistline and I'll rule a straight line there. The next line is going to be from my shoulder to the full length of the blouse, which is the same full length we used for the back piece, and I'll rule out a straight line there. And then another line we are going to draft is the back's waistline. The front is going to have an extended V. So I'll start indicating what the line stands for. I have my bust point, I have my under bust, I have my half length or the waistline, and then I have my full length, which is same with what we use for the back piece. And then this last line here is my back's waistline. So I'll just write BWL for back's waistline. I'll move back to the top part of the pattern paper, the starting line, which is right there, and I'm going to take my neck width. I'm still using 3 inches because that's what I use for the back piece, but for the neck depth I am using 3 inches. This time around it's no longer going to be 1.5 inch. So I'll connect those 2 points together with a curve which would give me my neckline. Right from that starting point again, I'll take my shoulder measurement, divide by 2, and right there I'll come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope, and I'll connect it to meet my neck width. So from that shoulder width there, I'll mark downwards my round armhole measurement, divide by 2, and I'll make sure it is sitting at the width of my shoulder measurement so that the line is very straight by the time I connect it downwards. And then I'll just extend this to the right side. That's my armhole line. So now I have to create my armhole curve. I'll mark the midpoint of that armhole line there, and I'll mark inwards half an inch at that point. So I'm going to place my ruler such that a part of it is touching where the shoulder ends, a part is touching the half an inch inwards, and a part is touching the base of the armhole line, yes, that we extended. And in one swipe we'll get our armhole curve. Next, we'll start taking the dart, and I'm going to be marking 4 inches on the bust point and likewise to the back's waistline. Remember that we already took the dart at the back piece, so we already know that our dart line is 4 inches. So After we rule out that line, I'm going to mark the midpoint of my shoulder line as well. And the midpoint is over there. I'll just connect from that point there to meet this bust point line in a slanted form. So I'll just make a dot at the bust point line there. Now on the under bust line at the left side, I will mark 1/2 inch, and then on the back waistline, I'll also mark 1/2 inch. I'll connect that 1/2 inch together with a straight line, just as seen. And then on the right side, the other side facing the side seam, I'm going to now mark 1.5 inch over there. And also on the back waistline, I'll mark the same 1.5 inch. I'll connect these two 1.5 inch together, which is going to form a straight line, just as seen. So now we are going to connect these dot lines that we've already drawn to meet that bust point there, that place that I dotted earlier. So from this left side here, I'm going to connect from that under bust line to meet the bust point in a slanted form. And then for the right side, I'm going to use the curved side of my ruler so that I can connect it together, and it's going to have a nice curved shape over there. So this is what it looks like so far. I'll just go ahead and I'll deepen my dot line so that it is more visible, because the space in that dot line will not be needed. We are going to be cutting it out. So I'll just make the dot line more visible, because the dot line is like the actual line that we're working with now. So on the armhole line, I'm going to mark my round bust measurement divided by 4, which gives me 9.75. I'll also bring that same measurement to my bust point. Then on the under bust line, I'll take my round waist measurement divided by 4, which is 8, and I'll replace the 2 inches in that dot area over there. Also on the waistline, I'll take my round waist measurement divided by 4, which is 8, and I'll also replace the 2 inches for the dots there. And then on the full length, I'm going to mark my hip measurement divided by 4, which is 10.75. And then I'll replace the dot measurement there. Because we want the hip area to stand, we don't want it to lay flat. Same way we did to the back piece, I'm still going to add an extra 1.5 inch to that measurement that we have there. So I'll just quickly connect these lines together. First of all, do not apply any measurements on the back waistline. We are going to come back to the back waistline. So remember that when we're drafting the back piece, everything stops at the full length. So make sure that all your round bodice measurements stops at the full length as well. So now I'll bring the side piece of my back piece, and I'm going to place it to mark the length of the front piece. Okay, remember that I went upwards by 1.5 inch when we marked the back piece earlier, and I just wanted to remind us that's why I'm bringing back the back piece again. So I'll just make sure that it is equal with the side piece of the front piece, and once I have gotten that, I will go ahead and I'll close up these dots that we have right here. So the reason why I'm closing up these dots is just so that I can accurately mark my back's waistline properly. I can actually give it the shape that I want accurately. So if you don't close this up and you just go ahead to connect a straight line like that, you will see that it will not be accurate. One side will be longer than the other. So let me just show you guys. Now that I've closed it up, from that point there, I'm going to connect a straight line to meet where I have my back's waistline, just as seen. So afterwards, I'm going to open up the dart and you will see how the lines are formed. So just imagine that we didn't close that dart. This is what it would have looked like. We would have gotten it wrongly, but because we closed that, we're able to get it accurately. So along the side seams, I'll start marking my sewing allowance, which is going to be 1 inch. I'll just accurately mark it and I'll connect it up as seen. So right at the bust point line, I'm just going to extend that line outside, and then also on the waistline, I'm going to extend that line outside. Those are the areas where I will have my buttons placed. So I will start marking 1 inch there for my button band. That is the only part where I will have my buttons placed. So now that I've marked that, I'll just quickly label it as button band. It might not be visible to you, but just label it so you don't mix these things up. So at the back waistline there, I'm going to mark inwards 1/2 inch. That's because I don't want this part to be straight downwards. I need it to have like a little bit of space there. So I'm going to connect a slanted line from this bottom band to meet this 1/2 inch that I marked at the back waistline, either 1/2 inch or 1 inch. Now we'll proceed to making both the lapel and the collar. So at that neck depth there, I'm going to mark 3 inches outside of that line where I have my neckline. I marked 3 inches there, and then I'll connect a straight line. So I'll just connect a slanted line from there to meet this bust, to meet this bottom band that we have at the bust point area. So I'll just deepen these lines very well so it is more visible. So in order for me to get my collar, I'm going to bring back the back piece. I'm going to bring back the neckline of the back piece, and we are going to take the measurement of the neckline. This is what our back pieces look like. So I'll take whatever measurement I have right there along the neckline, just as seen, and I have exactly 4 inches there. So I'm going to mark that 4 inches upwards just as seen, and then I'll connect a straight line. Make sure your line is very straight. Connect a straight line there. So now that I've marked that, I'm going to determine how wide this collar will be, and I'm going to be using 4 inches for the wideness as well. So I marked 4 inches there just as seen, and I'll connect a straight line again to meet it. So from that point there again, I'm just going to close up that whole part. Just connect a straight line or a slanted line just as seen. This is what the collar is, right? We've created the base for the collar. Now it's time for us to define the collar so you can relax properly. Right at that point there, I'm going to mark outside 1 inch, and that is because our collar is supposed to be in a curved form. Because if your collar is straight, it's not going to relax, it's going to gap. So we are now going to create a new curve to meet that point just as seen. So right at that point where we marked the width of the collar, which I said 4 inches, we are going to mark upwards 1 inch. And the reason why we're marking 1 inch upwards is just so that by the time we fold the collar downwards, it will not be tight, it will be relaxed properly on that area. And then to close up this part, we are just going to create a nice curve for the close, because of course the base of the collar is not straight, so the curve, the top part does not have to be straight. So now we are going to get our notch. Remember, we've closed everything here, and in order to get your notch, it's very simple. It's to just basically cut out a part, basically how we regularly do our notch, and that is why we call this type of collar a notch collar. We'll just cut out a bit from it. So right there, I'm just going to mark 1.5 inch, and I'll just connect it as seen. You can just connect it anyhow you want. You can connect it downwards or upwards. Just make sure I'm making a notch, and that is what my notch collar will be like. So I'll shade out that part because we are going to be cutting out that part. That part will no longer be needed. So now we just connect a straight line from this my neck width to meet my bottom band, and that whole area that I marked is called the lapel. That is the part that will be folded. When you put on your blazer, you will see that it is folded and relaxing properly on your chest area. So I'll just go ahead and I'll cut out the other side of the papers that we don't need, so I don't confuse us with too many lines. And then we'll still come back to finish up the darts that we're taking earlier, and we'll proceed to cutting this properly. So if you look closely to what we have here, you will notice that the only dart we've taken is the regular dart, which is the lower bodice dart. So now I'm going to take the side dart. So from that bust point there, I marked 1/2 inch right there, and that's because I don't want this side dart to be very sharp on the bust point. I need it to be a bit relaxed around that point. So on that bust point line, they are only marked 1/2 inch. Regularly, I would take like 1.5 inch or 2.5 inch, but because I've already taken the zip botch dart, I don't need to take much for this side dart anymore. So I only took out 1/2 inch, and then I connected it in a straight line into the sewing allowance we have there. So by the time I cut that out, I will now make an opening at this line that we marked to the shoulder width there, this dart line that was extended to our shoulder width. So by the time I close up that 1/2 inch dart that we have there, you will see that the darts have transferred to the upper part right there. And for us taking this darts, we don't have to start replacing any side measurements. We don't have to start replacing the darts. No, we only transferred the darts to the upper part. And I basically just took that dart so that we can be able to open the top part, not because we really need it. So that's why you can see that the measurements we took was not much. And now we can proceed to cut out the other darts. I will indicate what all of these pieces stands for. I have the collar, I have the center front, and I have the side front. So this is what all my front patterns look like. So on my folded pattern paper, I'll rule out a straight line at the top part, which is going to be my starting line. and right from that starting line I'm going to mark downwards to the full length of my sleeve, and I'm using 24 inches for the full length. So you're going to determine how long you want yours to be, and you make a straight line across that point, and I'll indicate that line as FL, which means full length. So the next line we are going to take would be from the shoulder to the elbow line, and the elbow line is this part right here, and I'll just mark what I have there. I marked 13 inches, that is my elbow line. Make sure to find yours and apply it, and then I'll also rule a straight line there, and I'll also indicate that as E or EB, which stands for elbow. And then I'm going to now mark my bicep line. So the easiest way to get your bicep line is to place a ruler as seen, and then mark from your shoulder to where that ruler ends, and that is the easiest way to get your bicep line. Mine is 6 inches, most people is 4 to 5 inches. And then now I'm going to mark my round bicep measurement on that bicep line. This is your round bicep measurement. This is how to take it. You are going to mark it on the bicep line. So at this point, if you want yours to have ease, after you mark the bicep line, you can add your ½ an inch for ease, but I do not want mine to have any ease. I just want everything to be fitted, just as the picture inspiration. Now I'll mark a slanted line from the top part to meet this my bicep measurement that I have on my bicep line there. And now it's time for me to mark my armhole curve on that straight line. So in order to accurately get that, I'm going to mark the midpoint of this line. That's from the top starting line to the bicep line, which is 3 inches. But I'll mark that measurement, I'll mark that point there on that slanted line. I'll mark the midpoint on the slanted line. So my round armhole measurement divided by 2 is 8 inches. So I'm going to now place my tape like this, just making sure that from that midpoint upwards, the curve is facing up, and then downwards, the curve is facing down. And I'll just try as much as possible to make sure that I have 8 inches along that curve. So that way I know how much of the curve I would do. So I'll just mark the curve just as seen. And by the time you mark out the curve, you are going to take the measurements you have around that curve area there, and it should be same with your round armhole measurement divided by 2, which is basically the determinant I use to mark this. So now that I've gotten that accurately, I have the exact measurement that I need there. I'll go to my elbow line and I'll take my round elbow measurement divided by 2. On my full length, I'll take my round wrist measurements just as seen. I'll divide that measurement by 2 and I'll mark it right there on the full length. I'll connect all these lines together. After I have connected the lines together, I'll go ahead and I'll start marking my sewing allowance, and I will add it up together. I'll connect the sewing allowance together and I'll cut it out. So this brings us to the end of the part 1 of this tutorial, which is the pattern drafting. In my next upload, I will be showing you guys how to transfer this to your fabric, how to properly sew it, and how to make sure that by the time you finish sewing, it's going to be looking as professional as this without any trace of the sewing allowance or anything. I will be showing you guys all of that in the part 2. So if it's something you're interested in learning, make sure to keep on watching. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like, don't forget to share, because that helps you to recommend this channel to other people as well. And that'll be said to you in the next video. Bye.